As we continue to talk about education in Minnesota, Heather Mueller is the Deputy Commissioner for the Minnesota Department of Education. Heather, a lot of the schools are getting ready to switch to either fully in-person or a hybrid model for those who have not been having classes since a year ago. Bring me up to speed with where things are at and what we're going to see this week.
Well, I think what you're going to see is that the governor did lay out an expectation that our schools would be back in by some type of in-person, or whether that's an in-person model or a hybrid learning model by March 8th. We also know that we've had a number of schools that have been in the entire year. And so we really want to be respectful of that delineation. As we know that people have been in, the work that we did around the update to the Safe Learning Plan a couple of weeks ago was really meant to help to highlight how it is that we can bring our students back if they have not been in. Some of the updates we were able to do around mitigation strategies, the moving forward with testing for our screening testing for our students who are between the ages of 12 and 25, as well as the opportunity for more and more staff to be vaccinated. And so this is really giving us the opportunity to have as many students as possible in an in-person learning process, with whether that's in a hybrid model or in person, with access to their to their peers as well as to their teachers.
We've talked a lot about the gaps in learning that has happened because of this pandemic, and then the need to get kids more in school if possible. Do we have recent numbers, data that shows us kind of where things are at right now, or is this something that's going to continue to come out over the next year?
Well, it's going to continue to come out. We've had this data, as you know, we've had schools since the beginning of the school year reporting their learning model data to us, so that we had a sense, and so did our community had a sense of where we were, whether we were in a hybrid or in person or a distance learning model. We know that at this point in time, we have roughly 88% of our school districts and charter schools across the state who are in either an in-person model or in a hybrid model.
If you can hang with me, I got to take a quick break, and
Sure.
We'll come back, and I want to talk about the students that we have lost within the public school system. So give me just 2 minutes. We'll come back and talk about that.
All right, that's great. Thank you.
Again, I'm speaking with Heather Mueller, who is the Deputy Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Education. Before the break, we're kind of talking about and catching up where things are with schools reopening across the state. But I do want to talk about the dropout rate versus the kids who are leaving the public school systems in Minnesota altogether and going to private learning, or maybe doing all online, but leaving the public school systems. I know that we have lost a number of students.
Well, I think there's a distinct difference between a dropout rate and then students who are choosing to enroll in a public or in a private or in a homeschool setting. And so when we're talking about students who are dropping out of high school, it means that they may still be living in Minnesota, but they have chosen not to continue their education. Students who are at this point in time switching their learning models, whether it's a public school and moving into a private or a homeschool model, those are just students who are just changing their enrollment. They are still enrolled in school. And so those are two different pieces. We do know that we have seen that public school enrollment is down roughly 2% from the 2019-2020 school year. And we know that it's mostly a majority of those are our younger students, specifically in kindergarten. We had a lot of families who chose, instead of having their students start kindergarten at the age of 5, they held them one more year and are going to be starting them at age 6. And we also saw a big spike in homeschool. And so we know that that was a space where we had some shifts in enrollment for our public schools.
How does that affect funding, Heather? I know that funding goes per pupil, so that changes the dynamic of things for districts.
It does, for a variety of reasons. 2% doesn't sound like a lot when you think about the grand scheme of funding and you think about the population. But when you look specifically at schools, so if you looked at Rochester Public Schools specifically, you saw a difference between 18,000 students to 16,000 students. So you know that's 2,000 students is a significant shift. When you think about that in the forming of funds, and you think about that for programming, and you think about staffing, When you do not have those funds that are allocated based on your students, it also means that there will impact your programs that are you have available to students, and it also means that it impacts your staffing. And in the way that we have moved forward, and the governor has asked the legislature to pass in the Senate the opportunity for our students to have some type of pandemic enrollment loss, meaning that our school districts would have the opportunity to have that funding back to support the ongoing programs as well as the staffing. Because our belief is that our students love their schools. And although this last year wasn't exactly what some of their families had wanted, and they had chosen a different setting and different enrollment, that they will come back because their public schools are incredibly important to them and their opportunities continue to grow. But we know that thinking about the staffing as well as the programs is something that's really important for our schools.
How has this pandemic affected the Department of Education specifically? We've talked a lot about how it has affected districts and greater Minnesota versus the metro and things like that. But for the Department of Education, it has also affected kind of how you guys do things. And you've been busy, although you do a lot of work from home. You guys have had to really shift things around, I have to imagine.
We have had to shift, and I think a couple of things are important to note is we have always really valued the relationships that we've had with our school districts, with our charter schools, with our educational organizations, as well as with our community partners and our families. And we're still here to support our schools. And what we've learned through this pandemic is that those relationships and what we've built and the trust that we've built over the years is incredibly important, because we are in this together. People are no longer really coming to the Department of Education specifically, but we're able to provide continued ongoing professional development and support in a lot of ways that people are doing it right from their work in offices, as right, Zoom and Teams, and just gives you the opportunity to continue to help to support and provide programming, but also gives us the chance to do things a little bit differently.
Y'all have incredibly important jobs, and so much has changed. Heather, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today, and we'll see what happens for the rest of this school year. I appreciate you. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, we'll be back.